Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, thank you.
Okay. My name is Sandy, and I'm from Concord, California.
Oh,
here
great.
on vacation, and it's great to be here.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, it is wonderful. So my question is somewhat similar to the Thanksgiving thing. I lost a good Christian friend. I mean, I've been an atheist for a long time, but I never really thought about it, until my son introduced me to the online atheist community. Anyway, so I lost this friend because she's very fundamentalist and not greatly educated. And she had this childlike approach to her religion where she would actually, if you asked her a question, she would put her knees together and fold her hands in her lap to answer. But anyway, to make it short, she had this habit of witnessing. We'd be walking on an architectural tour and she would say, "Isn't it wonderful how God has made these beautiful things?"
Okay, that'd get very tiresome very quickly.
Yeah, and it drove me mad, and I could not ever think of an answer to shut her up. So like,
How about people can hear you? Other people can hear you. Might want to use your inside voice for this. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I miss her friendship, but I would like her to stop witnessing. And she just snuck it in every conversation, even though she knew I was an atheist.
Now, are you saying this is the friend you lost, or is this another friend?
I lost her as a friend.
Okay.
Somehow she sensed the anger and the frustration, and she couldn't talk about it without compromising her beliefs, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was just sputtering because I didn't know what to say.
One way to deal with that might be to, if you're in a similar situation, is to witness yourself. I know that a lot of atheists have to put up with this, right? Where they're maybe the token atheist at work or something like that, and everybody's throwing little jabs and this and that, and if you sort of just give it back and say, look at this Ebola virus that God made, or whatever. There's no shortage of that, and.
And she wouldn't sense the anger in that.
Well,
No, she wouldn't.
and no. The point is that you're sort of taking it out and showing it to her so she can see what it looks like, right? And that way, at least you're giving some perspective on the behavior.
I had something like this, and I wouldn't say that I was witnessing, but I met a woman online. It was an interesting thing. I won't go into the whole history of it, but basically we had some things in common. We like gardening and stuff like that. And so we ended up being friends online. We've been friends for years now online, and she was religious. I didn't really know how much religious she was, but I knew that she was actually working in the church and that she did instruction with the children. So I just kind of laid low on the religious discussion. We just talked about gardening, and that was cool. But there was some stuff going on with her, and I remember like once or twice, and she sent me a note, and she said something like, that she was having such a stressful time, it was so bad, and she was so grateful that God was there for her because she didn't think she could get through it without God. And I knew she didn't know anything about my religious affiliations, so she wasn't trying to be obnoxious. She was just expressing how she felt. And I would write her back, and I would say, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. I think you're more strong than you think you are, and I think that you could actually, pull yourself through this stuff, because you seem like a really strong person to me. And so there were things that I would kind of throw back at her when she would say, like, I need God for this or I need God for that, where I would say, I think you can do it. You know what I mean? You seem like a really can-do person. And so it wasn't really me witnessing back so much as kind of pointing out to her that she was undermining her own credibility or undermining her own strength and not giving herself credit for what she was doing.
Yeah.
Well, what was funny is I saw it as sort of being affirmative, but after maybe several exchanges, she wrote to me this sort of thing where she was like, what is up with, like, what do you believe about God? So she kind of clued in that there was something going on there. Might not have been as subtle as I thought I was being, but I just wrote her back and I was honest with her and I said, here's the deal. I'm an atheist and you say these things about God and I kind of see it in a different way. And I see it as like you having the strength to do these things yourself. And that was just kind of what I was trying to express because it's the way I view it. I said, but I don't usually bring it up with people in a direct way because I never know how it's going to affect somebody. And I know that with us, we're friends and we're into gardening and stuff, so I don't want it to be a problem, and I hope that's okay. And she actually wrote back and said, would it be okay if I asked you some questions? And I said, yeah, you can ask me questions. I said, but let me just warn you that sometimes when people hear the answers, they feel as though their perspective is being dismissed. I said, I'll be honest with you and I'll try to be kind about it. And do the best I can to just kind of tell you what my perspectives are. But if at any time you feel like you're being belittled or dismissed or that your views are not being respected, then just let me know and we can just go right back to gardening, and I'm fine with that. And so that's what she did. She asked a few questions and then she was done. Later, she was on my Facebook friends list, and when I started to switch over to have like an atheist page versus my friends and family page, I kind of alerted the people that were theists on my wall that we were going to swap over to this other page for them. And she actually PM'd me and said, would it be okay if I stayed on your atheist wall because I really like it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and
Nice.
she's always
Thank
been
you.
really positive, and she knows not to be religious on the wall, and she's respected it like 100%.
So there's an opportunity there.
Well, she's interested.
Okay, so the last question she asked me, which just sent me over the hill, was, isn't it wonderful that God created universities? Now, what would you have said to that? That's my last question, and I'll hand the
Wonderful that
baton.
God created universities. I don't know.
Oh, you can't make that stuff up.
Yeah, I'm not.
She was twirling around with her
Yeah.
hands up in the air like Cinderella or
Yeah.
something.
Oh my goodness.
No, there is. I mean, this is one of those things where you've got somebody that's kind of backing it up, right? So, I mean, you know that she knows that people made universities, but in her head, it's like God was behind that initiative
Right.
somehow secretly, right? Or to her, I guess not secretly, openly, she sees God as being behind the initiative. There's really not much that. The only rebuttal to that is just to point out that we don't see evidence of that. But I don't. I
Right.
mean, that's sort of in your
Or
face,
say,
right?
you
I
know,
mean.
what a shithead for stealing credit for for the work that some hardworking people did. Anyway,
I'll have to think
I'd
about
be with
that.
you there.
Seriously.
That's sort of beyond the
I'd be a
pale.
little confounded. I mean, with how to come up with a rebuttal to something like that or a response to it other than just a drop jaw. Like, what would I say in that moment? In response to that would not be obnoxious, I would have to think.
I'd just go ahead and be obnoxious. Yeah. Well, thank you for your question. You know, I think we're low on time. One more? Okay. A quickie.
Hi, my name is Becky, and I'm from Maryland. And
Wow.
I know.
Another visitor.
I'm an environmental scientist, and I work with marine communities a lot. Particularly, I'm working with a small community that's very traditional, very full of watermen, very conservative. They've lived there forever, and they believe what their grandfather believed, etc. And I'm currently working with them to adapt to climate change, basically, which turns into some very interesting communication situations. And in general, I guess I just wanted to see if you guys, dealing with communicating some very delicate topics, had any recommendations for me as to how to effectively communicate information without being condescending, but to try to actually get a message across. And secondarily, there's some talk among my colleagues of tapping into their religious communities, which are very strong and very close-knit, to try to use that network to communicate these things. So any
Okay.
thoughts would be appreciated.
I've got some thoughts. Often when you're communicating with groups that are different than you, the first thing you got to do is find common ground. And so what you might do is, with the climate change thing, you might go and try to figure out some changes that are occurring in your environment that they notice, and notice that they are changing, and that maybe their father or grandfather saw something different, and use that as the starting point to say, hey, this is changing, and hey, we're worried about this, and the cause maybe, you don't have to hammer on the cause so much as, hey, it's changing, we want to do something about it, and we're concerned, and I think that anybody making their livelihood on the ocean is going to be concerned about these things too. And as far as the faith community thing, there are plenty of messages in the Bible about stewardship and these sorts of things that you can kind of play those strings and get the right response, I think, out of those folks. And I don't think it's terribly hard to find those online, but that might be the way to go, is to talk their talk a bit.
And also, I don't know specifically your community that you're working in, but in most communities you have kind of a range of conservative to liberal, like churches. And so you might try to find that area where they start to converge, where there's maybe some networking between those two brands of, the religious structure, and see if you can sort of get in more with the liberal churches and how they view things, because they're usually more open to scientific reality, and then see if that message can kind of trickle down into the more moderate churches. It may not make its way all the way to the conservative churches, but at least it would help to get into some of the community and impact some level of informational change.